With that, I will call to order the Petersburg Borough Assembly meeting for Monday, June 15th, 2020. The clerk, please call the roll.
Chelsea?
Here.
Taylor?
Here.
Jeff?
Here.
Mark?
Excused.
Bob?
Here.
Brandy?
Here.
And Jay?
Here.
Thank you.
We have 6 members in the assembly here. This evening, with Mayor Jensen excused. Now it's time for the voluntary Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That brings us to item number 3, the approval of minutes. There are no minutes available for approval this evening. Which brings us to item number 4, amendment and approval of meeting agenda. Are there any amendments to the agenda this evening, or if not, I would entertain a motion to approve it? Mr. Mayor, Cumberland, proceed. Go ahead, Jeff. Cumberland, proceed.
I would like to add a very quick update on the submarine cable under assembly discussion items. Only take me a minute or so. Thank you.
Is there a second to that? Oh, second. Okay, I've been moved to amend the agenda to include an update on the submarine cable, and seconded by Norheim. Will the clerk call the roll on the amendment?
Certainly. Brandy?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, and we'll put that under the first assembly, under 17, will be the first discussion item, number 1. But any further amendments, and if not, I would entertain to the motion to approve the meeting agenda as is.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Member Michi, proceed.
Thank you. Hey, we planning to have a situation report from Incident Commander Hagerman, just on the overall how things are going with his operations there.
It is not on the agenda right now, but if you'd like Carl to speak to it at some point, I'm sure he could during be called upon, either during the assembly discussion item, or if you were so inclined, we could ask him. I think it would be fine for somebody to ask him on the report about their officers.
Yeah, no, that would be fine. And the other thing I had, Mr. Mayor...
Wait 1 second, Member Michi. Mr. Hagerman, is that okay with you to give us a brief update and report about our officers?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Member Michi.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I don't know who can speak to this, but possibly we could have maybe an update from somebody on the census that's going on in town, and just a short report. I don't know where that's going to come from. I don't know if Liz is on or Steve is available, but just a short, brief update.
This is Steve. I can speak to that. I'll include it in my report, if that's okay.
Yeah, that would be fine, Mr. And Mr. Mayor, the last thing I had is I see we have 2 correspondents towards the end of this our agenda packet, but did the letter from Mrs. Marsh make it into this week's agenda, or will that be on the borough's website?
It'll be on the next agenda, Jeff. It did not make the deadline, which of course was a week ago.
Okay, thank you very much.
back to the motion at hand. I would entertain a motion to approve the meeting agenda as is.
Excuse me, hang on. Actually, wait a second. We didn't have a second on these amendments that Assemblymember Mucci is making.
Apologies. Thank you, Clerk Thompson, for second by Member Tremblay.
Thank you.
And can the clerk call the roll on the that amendment? Thank you, Debbie.
Yes, absolutely. Bob?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
And Jay?
Yes.
Thank you.
And its amendment is approved unanimously, and now I will entertain a motion to approve the meeting agenda as amended. So moved. Second. Motion is made by Member Mucci and seconded by Member Norheim. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay. We have approved an amended meeting agenda. Brings us to number 5, public hearings, which there are none. Nor are there any bid awards at number 6. Which brings us to number 7, persons to be heard with items related to tonight's agenda. And Clerk Thompson, do we have anyone on the line who would speak to items related to the agenda?
Vice Mayor Stanton-Gregor, we actually do not. We do, for your information, we do have Raleigh Cook with Joteman Enterprises on the line, although he's really just on the line in case you have questions under the agenda item. He doesn't really need to speak at this time.
Excellent. In that case, what I will do, if there are any questions for him, I will reserve them for the discussion phase of that. And just in case there are, and if not, we'll just proceed accordingly. Thank you, Clerk Thompson.
Yes, thanks.
And no one else on the line for visitor reviews related to the agenda, though?
There is not.
Okay, just wanted to be sure. Which will bring us to number 8. Persons to be heard with items unrelated to tonight's agenda. Clerk Thompson, anybody for that?
There is not.
Okay, then. That'll bring us down to number 9, board, commission, and committee reports. There's nothing there. Nothing on the consent agenda. Which brings us to report of other officers, and as amended, I'll bring that to you, Carl Hagerman, for an IOC update, if you could, and thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Glad to provide a report. So the EOC continues to work on the various mandates that have come down from the state of Alaska. The latest being the interstate travel mandate, and all of the work that is going into standing up an effort at the airport to greet travelers coming in from out of state or out of country and to screen them in accordance with the mandate and the travel declaration form. The EOC has been working carefully with the hospital to develop a testing process to be available at the airport as well. In the meantime, the staff, the temporary staff that we've hired to greet and screen travelers is directing anybody that would like to take a test when they reach Petersburg to the COVID hotline so they can schedule an appointment to have a test taken at the hospital. And there have been several travelers that have taken us up on that. Just this afternoon, we were working on setting up another tent at the airport. So now we've got 3 tents and actually have set up the communications trailer, the EOC communications trailer, to provide some shelter for the hospital staff. But it's hopefully going to be setting up the testing process tomorrow, although testing may not be available right away. They need to set up and make sure that they can perform the process that they planned without any hiccups. But they are working hard on that. So although it was a very, very short time frame for the EOC to respond to the state's desire to contract with the EOC, local EOC, to stand up an effort at the airport, I think we were successful at that, and we're almost all the way through with providing a level of testing as well. There is a contract that will be coming to the Assembly between the Petersburg Borough and the state of Alaska in regard to all of the effort that's taking place at the airport, and working with the hospital to make sure that all the costs on our end are identified so that we can seek reimbursement from the state for our efforts. That was their intent, and so that is the direction that we're heading with that. A lot of other items that the EOC has worked on are kind of in a glide path right now. Not a lot changing, although there are lots of positive cases around us in the region, with Wrangell seeing their first cases, Haines seeing their first case, their cases on Prince of Wales, Juneau, and Ketchikan. Petersburg has thankfully skirted that spike that the whole state of Alaska is seeing right now, so we're thankful for that. And but we do realize that that's probably going to be short-lived, and there will be additional cases in Petersburg. So we're remaining vigilant in our efforts and trying to maintain our presence on social media and the internet, passing along information from the state as it comes in, and that's a big focus right now, just maintaining that presence and making sure that the community has a resource to turn to when changes arise. Another really good bit of work that the EOC has facilitated is Liz Cabrera, our planning chief, has worked on a nonprofit and child care grant program that was approved by the Assembly, and that process has been moving forward well, and applications being received for that money. So hopefully there will be some businesses, and definitely child care businesses in town, agencies that can take advantage of that and help them. Child care is very vital to our economy, and so we want to support that as much as we can, and appreciate the Assembly's support of that program as well. I could probably go on for a long time, but I'm going to stop there and ask if there are any specific questions on any issues that the Assembly sees, and just know that the EOC is trying to maintain our presence and roll with the punches as the state puts out new information.
Any questions for Director Hagerman?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah. Carl, do we have sufficient kits and so forth to do any of the amount of testing that may be required, or are they in limited supply? And I understand now we may be changing methods of testing?
Well, I can take a stab at that. We have Phil Hofstadter on the phone that may be able to add to my comments, but let me just say that we have recently had more success on obtaining testing reagents. They were in very short supply for most of the response up to about a couple weeks ago. But I think the advent of the mandatory testing for the fishing fleet and processors did actually shake some more reagents out of the state, and so we have received a fairly adequate supply. I wouldn't say it's a great supply, but it's an adequate supply for now, and enough so that the hospital has been working on an asymptomatic testing protocol and program, which they have rolled out and tested some facilities within the community, long-term care being one of them. I know they were talking to Mountain View Manor. They're looking at other first responders being tested, and these are all asymptomatic tests. So in the past, the tests were reserved for people that were experiencing symptoms, and that is slowly expanding to people that are not experiencing symptoms, but may still want to test for one reason or another. And the Mandate 10 changes at the airport also fall into that asymptomatic testing protocol. And so we are working towards expanding that out to various groups of people in Petersburg. The testing itself, and Phil can do a much better job of explaining than I can, but so we have 3 tests, and he can please correct me if I'm wrong. So we have tests that we swab and that we send out of town to a lab, either a state lab or a commercial lab, for analysis. And the turnaround time on that is generally 3 to 5 days or so. And then we did receive the Abbott ID testing some time ago, but the Abbott ID is a PCR test, which is the test that's specified by the state for travel Mandate 10. But it's less accurate, less specific to COVID-19, and so it's not as good of a test as the third option that we have in Petersburg, which is also a PCR test and also a rapid test. The Abbott ID takes about 15 minutes, I believe, to run, and a Cepheid takes about an hour. But the Cepheid has been proven harder to obtain the reagents, and like I said, recently we were able to get more in town, but it is still a limited supply, but it's much more than we've had for some time. So there are different types of tests that can be run in Petersburg, and the hospital has developed the protocol for which test is used in which situation. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Helps.
Other questions for Director Hagerman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Hey, Carl, how are you doing on staff for your travel greeter pool?
We're doing okay. We hired 11 people, and we had 1 volunteer that was helping out. And so we have, generally we're seeing that it takes about an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon to handle that duty. And so with the people that we have on staff right now, that means roughly each one of them, if they work 5 hours a week, that we can cover it all. And that helps because it is kind of a difficult schedule to fill. It really breaks up somebody's day to have to go up there for 1 hour at a time. It's really hard for somebody to have another job that will allow that to occur. So having a larger pool like this and still a limited number of slots that we have at the airport at any one time allows us to fill that schedule up. And so far it's going pretty well. In the event that we have to expand to other forms of transportation, such as the ferry and maybe some harbor uses, we may look at adding some more temporary employees, but for right now, the focus is strictly on the airport and making sure that operation is running smoothly.
Thank you.
Any other Assembly members have questions for Director Hagerman? All right, thank you, Carl. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
That will bring us down to the Mayor's report. Regarding COVID-19, the Assembly appreciates the efforts made by Petersburg residents and current visitors to follow state directives and to be respectful of each other. A link to all state directives and other COVID-19 information can be found on the Borough's website at www.ci.petersburg.ak.gov. Click on the COVID-19 Information Hub box on the home page. Also, we are seeking letters of interest. Petersburg Borough is seeking letters of interest from qualified borough residents to serve on the Parks and Recreation Board until the October 6, 2020 municipal elections. For those listening, the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board consists of 5 vacant seats. Since this has been a very popular topic in town through the fall and winter, I really hope some people step up to serve their community. Thank you in advance. And letters of interest should be submitted to Clerk Thompson at the Borough offices located at 12 South Nordic Drive, sending to P.O. Box 329, Petersburg, AK 99833, or by emailing to dthompson@petersburgak.gov. And one thing I would briefly add, I'll let Steve touch on it, the census thing. I was going to mention it even though I was in the mayor's report. But I'll pass it over to the manager for his report, and thank you for touching on the census thing, Steve.
You're welcome, sir. Currently, the Petersburg Borough census response rate is 17.4%. That compares to a state average of 41%. So we're falling a little behind. Majority of that appears to be people filling it out online. That makes some sense. With the COVID thing, they have not done a lot of follow-up door-to-door, although that's scheduled to start in July or August. So if you don't want people banging on your door, I highly encourage people to fill out the online census. It doesn't take very long, and will help the borough with a lot of things. The count that the census develops helps us apply for grants as well as PIA and other entities, and that information is used by the federal government as well as many other agencies to set funding levels for organizations here. So again, encourage people to do it. Online is far easier than having to deal with someone at your front door. But if you don't do it online, they will come and visit, and it sounds like they're planning on getting back in July and August. I guess it's probably COVID, depending on what's going on. So that's it on the census. Do you want me to go right into the rest of my report? Okay.
Yes, that sounds good.
Okay, no problem. Water staff revisited the Cabin Creek Dam. Low-level outlet pipes to perform further investigation is required by the State of Alaska Dam Safety Program. They had thought they had heard some echo, hollow sound. We've confirmed that the grout at the culvert joint is solid and confirmed there is not a void around the culverts. Those findings will be forwarded to the State of Alaska. Public Works completed the installation of the new pig launching station at Cabin Creek Dam. This is a device that actually cleans out the inside of water lines and lowers resistance, so water flows easier, saves wear and tear on pumps, saves on electricity, and make sure we put as much water through the pipe as we can. After all the installation and stuff was done, P&D engineer came down and visited and to the site to check everything and sign off on it. That's required by state law to get a licensed engineer on water lines. Reed Brothers construction will start on the Casino Street sewer project on June 15th. This project will replace sewer main and manholes from 3rd Street to 7th Street on Casino. Recently, Public Works installed an access road to work on a weak power pole in the Hungry Point area. This pole is part of the circuit that serves Wrangell Avenue and terminates at Icicle Seafoods. The pole is now shored up with shot rock and will not be a worry to the department or our customers. Chris did meet telephonically with the sanitation rate consultant on June 2nd. The consultant is revising the rate study to reflect no rate increases in FY21. We anticipate having some options ready to present to the Assembly for discussion at the first meeting in July. Staff is working on spring maintenance at the museum and assisting various departments with sneeze guards and other related items to reopening to the public and completing the work orders as time allowed. This is in our maintenance area for most of our general fund buildings. Chris was still assisting the EOC as logistics chief. He's currently working with Ocean Beauty Icicle to coordinate on some traffic control changes at the north end of Main Street related to COVID testing and the safety of the cannery employees. Just want to thank his crew and the folks at Icicle for helping there. We're going to have lots of people crossing the road and waiting in line to get tested before they get into the icicle plant. And they're very concerned, as well as we are, about people getting too close together, or as well as getting out in the street. So we'll be putting traffic signs up. We'll kill the U-turn down there for a period of time while we're in the canning season, and once that's over, we'll go back to our normal operation. Property tax bills will be mailed July 1st. They are due October 15th. Finance staff is helping with the nonprofit grants and preparing for the end of the fiscal year and tracking the CARES Act funding and FEMA funding. Our online property map viewer is being updated with the new tax roll data. The update should be complete prior to statements being mailed out on July 1st. The nonprofit and child care stabilization program has been rolled out, as you heard earlier. Applications and the FAQ are on the Borough website. We're partnering with the Petersburg Community Foundation to get the word out and held 2 informational webinars on June 11th. Applications are due on June 26th. Deadline for child care providers is June 16th. Application and frequently asked questions are on the Borough website. Thanks to Shannon with the Finance Department for assisting in implementing the program. New COVID-related assistance programs continue to come online, and existing ones are being amended. The resources for nonprofits, businesses, and employees impacted by COVID-19 web pages are updated regularly as new information becomes available. Most notably, the Alaska Housing Finance Corporation recently announced a rental and mortgage assistance program. Applications will be accepted from June 15th through the 26th. More information is available at alaskahousingrelief.org or by calling 1-833-440-0420. The library grounds are looking absolutely marvelous. Thanks to Jesse for working his magic, and a special thank you to Doug Coral for volunteering to help this spring. Summer Stream, the library's summer reading program, is underway, and big thank you to John McCabe, who has donated $10,000 to the library's Art Education Endowment. To date, his contributions to the fund total just over $91,000. Interest earned from that endowment supports art educations at the library. We are amazed by his incredible support and generosity. Harbor is surprisingly full, as a higher percentage of locals picking up permanent stalls this season. Our fire EMS paid staff continue to work on COVID-19 related issues. Focus has been on Mandate 10 and the requirement to screen and collect forms from out-of-state travelers, reviewing travel plans as they are submitted to the EOC. Fire Marshal has been doing fire inspections at Icicle for access and clearance. He also spent time investigating a structure fire. The fire branch was granted permission to start in-person training with some very strict guidelines so we don't get those folks sick. Our emergency calls for fire and EMS are down from the last 3 months. Approximately 14 volunteers in fire and EMS responded to a structure fire on June 6th, utilizing 2 fire engines, a tanker with a porta-tank, and an ambulance. Thank you to the volunteers. EMS continues to respond to all calls using personal protective equipment appropriate for protecting against COVID. Thanks to the various volunteers, department members, and people from the public who have been doing some landscaping around the fire station. A special thanks to Teresa Stolpe. Assisted living continues to be on lockdown. No visitors other than essential individuals. Sheilyn is working with PMC staff to do voluntary asymptomatic testing on residents and staff at Mountain View Manor. The Alaska Housing Finance Company or Corporation file inspection is due June 15th. State of Alaska licensing inspection postponed till at least August. Food service continues to cook and deliver meals 5 days a week for the month of June. For the community, they've been serving between 45 to 55 meals per day. Stephanie is working on 4th of July plans with the Chamber and the Lighthouse Church. Plans should be announced in the next week or so. In fact, I think she did a radio show today and released some additional information. Parks and Rec are starting to bring back employees and scheduling training and lifeguard certification skills check and new lifeguard training in preparation for opening the aquatic center. Most borough facilities are now reopened with some restrictions, exceptions being the community center and assisted living. We expect to start having limited openings at the community center in late July and early August, with a more complete schedule by the start of school. No timeline for assisted living at this point. And none, unless there's questions.
Any questions for the manager?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, Member Mucci.
Thank you. Hey, Steve, in regards to the sanitation rate study, I understand that the rate increase isn't going to be, we're not going to be looking at one in fiscal year 21, but we still have that information so that when we're getting ready to digest the information that's coming from that study, we can kind of see what some of these alternatives might cost the borough. I mean, if we're going to maybe revise the recycling program, are there going to be dollars in that study to kind of tell us if it's cost beneficial for us? Like Chris talked about in the last meeting, there was 4 options, and it would be nice if we, since we're paying for this rate study, just to at least have the details of what the community might be looking for, not forward to, but what might be coming their way in a year. Okay?
Yeah, no, the rate study will outline all of this. I can't speak to exactly what's in it, but it'll be sent out to everybody, and if the information you're looking for is not already in there, that will be data we can get to at that point. And I expect the conversation around the rate study to not just be one meeting. I fully expect, totally up to the assembly if you want to do a work session, but regardless of how you want to approach it, I think it's a topic that deserves quite a bit of conversation with both the assembly and people interested in the community. So I think we'll take our time with it, since there's no rush. Worry about getting new rates changed and give the community a chance to weigh in.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the manager this evening? Steve, thank you so much. Appreciate it, sir.
Welcome.
All right. We have no unfinished business this evening. And this item number 15A, new business. 15A is ordinance number 2020-19, an ordinance amending Borough Code, Chapter 3.72, to provide for civil emergency provisions. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. The motion has been made by Member Mucci and seconded by Member Norheim. And before we get to our discussion on this, I was hoping that Director Hagerman could kind of weigh in on this, and see about this before us, Carl, if that's all right, before we get them. I'd answer some more questions before we have them.
Vice Mayor Stanton-Gregor, I would like to just clarify real quick that it was not actually IC Hagerman who brought this forward. It was Assemblymember Mucci who asked for it to be on the agenda.
Thank you for that clarification, but I will reply to you, Carl. It's likely to defer to some of the information in there.
Sure. Yes, Mr. Mayor, I will do that. So this ordinance, of course, as the Assembly knows, has been put in place for a limited time period in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. But the ordinance itself is actually a holdover from the old city code. It was an ordinance that was in place for many years, and is normal to have an ordinance on the books that allows for the municipality to take quick action in light of any disaster or emergency situation. It accounts for all types of different scenarios. I'm looking at the disaster response plan for the old city of Petersburg, that all of these things would be applicable, in some manner to the emergency ordinance. Things such as natural disasters like avalanches, earthquakes, wildfire, flood, landslides, tsunamis, those types of things, as well as other hazards or disasters like an enemy attack, terrorism attack, energy shortage, structural fire issue downtown, transportation accident. All of those types of events are more easily handled or more quickly handled if this ordinance is in place. It allows the borough to act quickly and decisively in response to any kind of emergency, really. And we've seen how it is effective in responding to the pandemic that we're facing right now. I did want to, if I may, just read the intent and purpose for the public's benefit of the proposed ordinance. And this is chapter 3.72.010, intent and purpose. It is the intent and purpose of this chapter to provide for the efficient utilization of the borough's personnel, facilities, and equipment in the event of a civil emergency, including, without limitation, natural or man-made disasters, pandemics, and disasters resulting from enemy actions, and to provide for the coordination of disaster and emergency service functions of the borough with all other public agencies and affected private persons, corporations, and organizations. And I think that says it all. It's a catch-all ordinance that allows us to respond to emergency situations.
Thank you, Carl. Appreciate you giving us a brief overview, especially for those listening at home. And for those listening at home, and a reminder to the Assembly, this being acted, it takes 3 readings, so we have plenty of discussion time on it. And with that, I'll open the floor to discussion.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I might.
Member Lynn, go ahead.
I have some legal questions related to this that I would like, and I will give to the clerk. I've already given her a couple, but I have a couple more also. But I agree that as we talked as Member Chelsea and I talked on the radio today, I'm in favor of this. I've got some questions about some parts of it, and what I'm going to do is that I'm going to vote in favor of it, and I'm going to try to get my questions answered, and may have on the next reading or two a couple of amendments to put in here. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Lynn. Discussion still.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Member Norheim, please proceed.
Just one thing that out of all of this seemed redundant was the use of pandemics in the paragraph that was just read, because the pandemic it falls under natural man-made disasters or resulting in an enemy action. Was that just thrown in there just because we're in a pandemic, or just to, you could start throwing things in there like wildfire and all these things that just fall under these, maybe some clarification as to why that was specifically put under there when it's already covered.
That's a fair question, Member Norheim. Carl, if you wouldn't mind just chiming in real quick, if you could.
Sure, Mr. Mayor. That is a really good question, and I think it is. It's essentially because the pandemic is first and foremost in our minds at the present time. The pandemic was not mentioned in the original code for the city of Petersburg, and as we're updating and dealing with the current pandemic, I believe it seems like an obvious add to the language, but I understand what you're saying. I don't think it hurts to leave it in there, but I understand the thought of redundancy as well. I think that without it, the borough would still respond. If the ordinance is passed, it would still respond and deal with a pandemic much the way that it is now.
Answer your question, Member Norheim?
Yeah, more or less. I guess I would make an amendment to remove pandemics from there because it's redundant and serves no purpose.
So is that a motion you're making right now, Member Norheim?
Yes.
Is there a second? It's a second by Member Lynn, I believe. Switching gears to any discussion on the amendment to remove the language pandemic.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go right ahead.
Hey, can you just clarify exactly what chapter and then what subchapter we're talking about, or is this just in the title?
I'm glad you brought that up, Member Nucci. I was going to ask Member Norheim, where specifically were you seeing that? I've got it in front of me, and I can't quite find it right now.
Yeah, that's my bad. It's under 3.72.010 under intents and purposes.
Got it. Right there on page 2. All right, back to the discussion on the amendment as people are researching it right now. I'll chime in on that as far as the amendment goes. I have no problem with it. It isn't, I agree with Member Norheim that it is redundant, but it's also not contradictory. I wouldn't have a problem leaving it in there, but since Director Hageman said there's no problem removing the language and it still apply, I have no problem with the amendment, I guess. That's my 2 cents. Any further discussion on the amendment?
Mr. Mayor?
Anything clear? Yeah, go ahead, Member Nucci.
Thank you. So I'm just looking through this. So is that the only reference to pandemic? Is that 3.72.010? I'm just...
As far as I can tell, yes. But if not, you can address it in the second reading if this amendment passes also, for that matter.
Thank you.
But I see yep. Further discussion on the amendment to remove the word pandemics from 3.72.010 intent and purpose. Okay, will the clerk call the roll on the amendment?
Jeff?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Chelsea?
No.
Bob?
Yes.
Brandy?
Hello.
Thank you.
And the amendment passes 5-1 with Member Trimbley voting no. It brings us back to the ordinance as amended in its first reading. Any further discussion on the ordinance as amended?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Member Nucci.
Thank you. I've spent part of the weekend reading this forwards and backwards, and I'm pretty comfortable with there's lots of checks and balances in this. It doesn't give an incident commander or the borough manager any direct authority here. There's always checks and balances with the assembly and local government. So when we first got started on this, it was kind of real clunky trying to sort out how we were going to respond to what was going on here, and I think it's taken some time to kind of sort through the details of this, and we'll see, if we get this out to the public to look at, maybe on the Borough website, let folks kind of weigh in on what they think, but yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with the way it's written. Like you said, we've got a couple more readings to deal with, and so sometime towards the end of July, this should be part of the Borough ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Nucci. Any other discussion on the ordinance as amended? I'll briefly chime in. I'm definitely going to vote for this. I appreciate the staff taking time to craft this in a thorough and comprehensive way. It seems like a very common sense thing to have on the books in the case of any emergency we might face in the community. And hopefully we don't need any of those. And I like Member Nucci said right there in terms of thorough checks and balances, and I think that having it on the Borough website would be great. And as a reminder to those listening at home, the next meeting there will be a public hearing in regards to if this passes. There will be a public hearing regarding it. So any feedback from the community, as always, encouraged to submit it. Any other discussion on the ordinance as amended in first reading? The clerk please call the roll?
Taylor?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Thank you.
An ordinance number 2020-19 passes unanimously in its first reading. Which brings us to item B. Resolution number 2020-09, a resolution approving the expenditure of $70,178 from the CARES Act Special Revenue Fund for Petersburg School District personnel costs in responding to the COVID-19 health emergency and PPE needed to mitigate the needs of the upcoming school year. I entertain a motion to approve. So moved. Been moved by Member Tremblay, and I'll take that as a second, Member Amici. Discussion. You want to chime in on this one? Go ahead, Member Amici.
Sorry about that. I was just amazed at how much temperature scanners cost. $3,000 a piece. That's steep. I understand it's pretty cutting-edge technology, but I was quite surprised at how much the temperature scanners were. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Amici. Yeah, I noticed that as well. It's a high-end product for sure. Other comments or discussion from the Assembly? And I'll chime in briefly then. I'll definitely be voting yes for this. I spoke at length with Finance Director Tao in terms of the way school contracts work in terms of administrative contracts and pay. They're definitely complex to say the least, and I was glad in terms of filling that void and getting the equipment needed to safely, open our schools this fall and provide our kids an education. I was really excited the CARES Act money can be used for that, to reopen our town here, and school is a critical part of that. And I'm very glad we can use this money to support our school district that way, so we can get back to our school life as normal as well. So again, I'll definitely be voting yes. Any further discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Taylor?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes. Thank you. And that resolution 2020-09 passes unanimously. Bringing us to item C. Resolution number 2020-10. A resolution approving the sole source purchase of two-station handicap accessible restroom trailers. I would entertain a motion to approve this purchase. So moved. It's been moved by Member Norheim, and I'll take that as a second from Member Tremblay. Discussion, please.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Member Mitri.
I'm going to vote in favor of this. I was a little concerned about the sole source part of this resolution. But, over the last winter, the Visitor Industry Working Group has been trying to come up with some steps that we need to do that would make things a little bit more easier for visitors and the public who are downtown. The restroom has been a big thing for us, and I think this gives us the opportunity to use them, not just for the visitors who come to town, but when we have, events in town, and there's not enough restroom facilities, instead of using the state office building or biking travel or somewhere like that, we have public restrooms that will be taken care of, and they're handicap accessible, and we'll be able to keep them clean and tidy, and when we're not using them, they'll be maintained well and put away for the winter, and I think it's a good thing for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Michi. Further discussion?
I have a couple questions, James, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Member Merrill.
What was the, I don't know if this is to Carl or Steve, but what was the reasoning behind not letting this go out to a normal bid process?
I can answer that, if you like.
Great.
Okay, thank you. So initially, we started looking at this potential purchase a while ago, and Finance Director Tao actually did a lot of the legwork looking for quotes, and we quickly found out that they're not that easy to come by in the Pacific Northwest, for one thing. There are a lot of companies that rent them, but very few that actually build them. The Midwest and actually the far southeast of the lower 48 is where these generally are manufactured. So we knew there was going to be a long lead time, to getting into some of these trailers in the first place. So that adds time to actual procurement. And then additionally, when we realized that the CARES funding from the federal government could be used for this purpose, we initially were looking at, like I said, purchasing these, but not really sure how to fund them. Trying to fit them into the FEMA formula was going to be difficult. When the CARES funding arose, it became possible. So we started looking a little closer at these and looked at some different options. But in the end, the lack of a bid process is really just to save time. By adding a bid process, we have to develop a specification and then advertise that specification, and then receive bids, make an award that must go through the assembly, and then we can order the trailers and then contend with the long lead time after that. So the sole source is really, in this case, intended to cut time from the order and delivery of the trailers, and without it, we're looking at probably lengthening the period of time to receive the trailer by 2 months.
Okay, then I have a question number more. Yeah, I have one more question. Because I like the idea of using the CARES money for this. It's been needed. But I was just, the other question, I don't know if this is maybe Joseph and Jody, if she's on the line, but was this comparable to other places that you found to purchase? Because it's just a lot, it's a steep number. So I'm just, if this is comparable from what she's researched, then that might change my opinion on the amount.
Yes, Member Morrell, it is a lot of money, and it was somewhat shocking to us when we started looking around for these trailers. This is by no means a ritzy bathroom trailer. It's a very utilitarian. It's a 2-restroom facility with one side being ADA compliant, the other one not, and it's about 15 feet long. The box enclosed portion is 15 feet long. It's about 8 feet wide. It is not a large, well-decked-out trailer, but still, $43,000 is a lot of money. But we did find, and Jody's looking at one of the other companies that we got a quote from was virtually identical in price. This company was slightly less by literally a couple $100 for the same type of product. We did look at another type of restroom that is really, it's a skid, it's not on a trailer. But we moved away from that. It's just basically for convenience. It's not as easy to set one of those up that's on a skid, and having it on a trailer is a lot more to Petersburg, basically spring through fall, and then winterize them through the colder months and bring them out in the spring again. So having a trailer was a better answer, but the prices that we saw were very comparable to this, and so that's why we're moving ahead with this request.
That answer your question, Member Morrow?
Yes, thank you.
Sure, you bet. Any other discussion from the Assembly right now? Clerk Thompson, I believe Mayor Jensen had written something. If you wouldn't mind reading that into the record, please.
Yes, thank you. Mayor Jensen is unable to attend the meeting this evening, but wishes to share his opinion of the proposed purchase of 2 handicapped accessible restroom trailers. He feels they are too expensive, will cause a staffing issue, needing staff to clean and maintain the restrooms, and notes the quoted price does not include shipping charges from Seattle to Petersburg. Mayor Jensen is not in favor of this purchase.
Thank you, Clerk Thompson, for reading that into the record for us. And further discussion by the Assembly. I'll chime in my 2 cents, I guess. I really have no arguments at all with what Member Morrow was talking about in terms of the cost, and Director Hageman touched on. That's a pricey piece of equipment. That said, I'll be voting for it, and here's why. In my years on the Assembly, every year it becomes a discussion topic that, like local businesses downtown, find themselves with people coming in and wanting to use the bathroom all the time. And we don't have a lot of public restrooms, for visitors in the summer. And of course, these things are expensive, and it's gotten kicked down the road every year because as an Assembly and as a board decided not to invest in that. And I get it, as we saw, the prices are not cheap. When I learned that CARES Act funding could be used for this, which makes complete sense, minimizing, unneeded traffic in local businesses by providing people an outdoor option, having steps keep them clean, having this being paid for by CARES Act funding seemed to really solve a long-term problem our local businesses have talked about downtown. And I was excited we could actually, find a way to help use federal dollars to fund this project. So I was excited to see that. I'll definitely be voting yes on it. Any further discussion?
Yeah, just really quick.
Yes, Member Tremblay, please proceed.
Yeah, just echoing your comments about how fortunate it is that it is a CARES Act eligible purchase, and we did get a letter of support from a few folks in support of this, including the Chamber of Commerce, so it will be a welcome addition to the downtown team here, hopefully before too long.
Thank you, Member Tremblay. Anything further?
One thing.
Okay. Of course. Go ahead, Member Norheim.
Just short. This number is about $60,000 less than the spitball number that was given to me by the borough manager. I think it was last May, and just having a conversation about it. So it sounds like a lot, but I was pretty excited to just see that it was only $92,000 instead of $150,000. That just pulling it out of the air after some quick research. So I'll be voting for this.
Thank you for your comments, Member Norheim. Anything further from the Assembly? The clerk, please call the roll.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Thank you.
And that purchase has been approved unanimously. Let's see, got myself lost here. So it's item D. I'm back in the game here. Item G, new business. Petersburg Borough Public Health Mandate number 3, in-person participation at public meetings amendment. And I'll give you some background before we go with this. At the June 1st, 2020 meeting, the Assembly expressed the desire to allow Assembly members attend meetings in person if they choose while observing social distancing practices. This amendment to Public Health Mandate number 3, if approved, extends the temporary suspension of in-person participation by the public, parentheses, due to lack of space for social distance, but will allow Assembly, Board and Commission members who prefer to attend in person while observing social distancing practices to do so. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
The motion has been made by Member Mucci and seconded by Member Norheim. Discussion.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Member Mucci.
I'm not sure I'm in favor of this at this point. I wanted to get it out there for discussion. Some of us, are in favor of getting together, I think, and some of us are still nervous about it. The component that still I haven't figured out yet is if you have a public meeting, I guess you're going to let members of the public there, but I'm just concerned about public meetings and limiting the public to be there. Some people are, one of the attendance policy for this ordinance, which I think it is here, is that it talks about people wearing a face covering while inside the municipal building. Well, not everybody's in favor of the face covering, so I don't see a big hurry to get together. I think a lot of us are going to be in and out of town throughout the summer. Without any more testing up at the airport, we still don't know if we're getting anything coming into town with our visitors. So I'll probably not be voting in favor of it this time, but I'd like to kind of see how we move forward with the health of the community. So, thank you.
Thank you, Member Mucci. The point of clarification, Member Clerk Thompson, if adopted, would this allow the public to attend meeting live or still only telephonically? Again, not members of the Assembly or the committee, but members of the participating public.
The participating public would participate telephonically if they wanted to participate during the meeting, or they could, of course, always continue to email the Assembly as they have been doing.
Thank you for that clarification, Clerk Thompson. That's the way I read that as well. Just wanted to touch on that regarding Member Mucci's comments that people with visitors' views would still be participating telephonically. Thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
Further discussion. Mr. Mayor? Yes, Member Mucci, Member Lynn, go ahead.
I'm going to take an alternative view of that. Is that I think that what was drafted hits exactly the discussion that we had at the last meeting. It allows members to make their own choice whether they want to attend in person or to do it telephonically. It takes no rights away. It requires masking. If you want to, if you don't want to, you can still call in. It's a first step in trying to come back to some normal way of doing business. And so I'm totally supportive of this that we implemented. It takes no rights away. It just allows choices to be made, and you can make your own choices. And I think it's time we start moving towards making some kind of opening to begin. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Lynn. Member Nohan, I believe I heard you chiming in there before.
I just wanted to hear what Member Lynn had to say.
That was in good timing.
I was going. Yeah, yes, it was. Yes.
Further discussion? I'll chime in on it. I'll be voting yes. I think Member Lynn phrased that well. Speaking for myself, that's not something I have interest in at this point. But I understand that both the Borough Manager and the Clerk have said they can accommodate the Assembly and Chambers with appropriate distancing and, as was mentioned, appropriate precautions being taken. Again, Member Lynn phrased it well. It's a good first step and addresses each individual's acceptable level of risk and comfort. So I have no problem voting yes on this today. Further discussion?
Yeah, just really quick.
Yep.
I'll be voting for it. Again, I think it's a good option. I think it's good to start to model what this kind of behavior looks like, since it's looking like it's going to be with us for a while. And I thought it would be worth reading out what the different, there's 6 steps that assembly members or board members, if they so choose, would be participating in to have safe meetings. Arriving for the meeting at least 15 minutes prior to the meeting start time, using provided hand sanitizer upon entry to the municipal building, wearing a face covering while inside the municipal building, recording body temperature and answering COVID-19 specific questions, sitting at least 6 feet apart in the assembly chambers and only in the prearranged seating, maintaining a minimum of 6 feet from any other meeting attendee, as well as once everyone leaves, the assembly chambers will be sanitized after each public meeting. So again, that's what the protocol would be for this to happen if people chose to participate that way. But providing that option, I think, is going to be important as we go forward too, to accommodate people's schedules and realities. And I just wanted to read that out for the public just so they get a sense of what the measures are for them to consider as they do business in their own lives and situations to consider going forward.
Thank you for that information for that public member, Tim. I appreciate that. Any other discussion from the Assembly? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Randy?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Jeff?
No.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Thank you.
That passes 5-1 with member Ricci voting no. Which brings us to item E. Petersburg Borough Public Health Mandate number 5. Borough Harbor Facilities revised and extended. Briefing on it, Public Health Mandate number 5 is amended to add recent changes to State Health Mandate 10, intra-state travel. It extends the effective date of August 31st, 2020, unless extended or earlier terminated. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by member Mucci and seconded by member Tremblay. Discussion. Carl, since you're on the line, I think all of us in the Assembly poured over this and it's fairly exhaustive. People that are listening in public, you could briefly fill people in on, I know you've been navigating this a lot, the state stuff coming down. You can kind of line people out in public what this means.
Sure, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
So mandate number 5 is a local mandate, and the goal of it is to control access to Petersburg Harbor. Initially, the first drafting of the mandate was specific to smaller cruise ships that were planning to come into Petersburg, and we wanted to assert control over any of those vessels coming into town that may be a risk to our local population and our economy by bringing in the virus. So this amendment, though, is more closely focused on the recent changes to the state interstate travel mandate number 10. And that mandate, when it changed, it allows for entry into the state given certain conditions are met, pre-testing or testing after you're here, that sort of thing. And what that did, by eliminating it doesn't eliminate the 14-day quarantine as an option, but as a rule, it moved away from that. When that rule was in place, it effectively protected Petersburg from access on the water side of our community from cruise ships and other visitors. But with the changes, we had to take another look at this mandate and try to make it make sense with the state's direction on this. And so you'll notice that in the past where we talked about being applicable to small cruise ships, the new amended version of Mandate 5 talks about passengers that are applicable to Mandate 10. And so it's really narrowing the focus to exactly what Mandate 10 is trying to achieve, which is a focus on the traveler themselves and their responsibilities to test or quarantine when they get to Alaska. It's difficult to discriminate against a harbor traveler versus an airport traveler, and with the state's initial focus on airports being key and urgent, it made sense to extend that same type of situation to the harbor travelers. And so with that, the changes are in place. It still retains the authority of our local health officer. Any person that comes into our harbor from another community and is applicable to Health Mandate 10 from the state, if there's somebody on board a ship that or a vessel that meets that criteria, then that captain should be calling our health officer and getting permission to disembark in Petersburg. And the health officer's role in this will be to protect the community, to interview the captain, ask questions about what process they've gone through to meet mandate number 10, also do a verbal screening of the people on board, and if there are COVID signs and symptoms of anybody on board or a COVID positive person on board, then the passengers will likely or probably and most definitely not be, if they're positive, be able to disembark into the community. However, if the captain can show proof that everybody on board is either not applicable to Mandate 10 or they have met all the provisions of Mandate 10, just as somebody coming in at the airport may have done, then they will be allowed to disembark the vessel and enter to Petersburg. It seems like a safe way to go, and as I said, it's not discriminatory against harbor users over airport travelers.
Thank you, Director Eggman, for that clarification. With that, I'll open up to discussion from the Assembly. 4 questions for Director Eggman, of course. I'll chime in since I'm not allowed to say on it. To speak directly to you, Carl, for navigating all the complexities coming down from the state right now. I know it's taken up definitely days, afternoons, and occasionally weekends trying to adapt to this constantly moving target. So thank you for what you're doing with it. Even listening to it is exhausting at times. I know it's not easy, so thank you. Further discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Go right ahead, Member Yuchi.
Thank you. So I just want to be clear that I understand what Carl just said. So that if we pass this extension on this mandate to August 31st, 2020, and we have this mandate in place, if a cruise ship wants to come to town between now and August 31st, and they present a plan to our health officer, and the health officer signs off on it, then they will be able to disembark here? Thank you.
To the Mayor. Mr. Mayor, can I respond to that?
Charles, you hear me? Go right ahead.
Oh, yes. Yeah, you're very quiet there, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So, Member Mucci, to answer your question, the mandate is less about a plan and more about what is happening on the ship at the time, 24 hours before they come into port in Petersburg. So the plan issue, of course, I mean, we would, as an EOC, we are requesting that cruise lines to send us their plan ahead of time so we understand what kind of precautions and mitigation they're taking for the crew and passengers as they wind their way through Southeast Alaska and visit different communities. It's been very, very valuable for us just to understand, for instance, what American Cruise Line is planning as far as onboard screening for passengers and crew, what their plan is for when or if somebody does start exhibiting symptoms of COVID-19. That's all very good information, but that plan does not, approval of that plan does not give them the right to disembark in Petersburg. To disembark in Petersburg, they must call the health officer at least 24 hours before they arrive and go through a verbal screening with Dr. Tasillo, who is our health officer right now. And based on that screening, he will decide whether or not the passengers and crew on that vessel will disembark in Petersburg. Does that answer your question?
A little bit, thank you. And so, if we see a cruise ship tied to the dock and we see the passengers walking through town, then the assumption that we're making is that that ship has passed all the protocols and there's nobody symptomatic on the vessel.
Yes, that is correct.
Could I ask you a question, Member Michi?
Sure. I'm just trying to. I've been talking about this for like 5 days, and I'm just trying to make sure I understand it. So there isn't any reason why a cruise ship can't come to Petersburg this month, as long as they present a plan. And their plan is approved by our health officer, and when they get 24 hours from when they come to Petersburg, they go through this verbal checklist with the health officer. Is that correct?
Yes, partially. It's still, the plan is nice to have, but they don't need approval of the plan. It's really what is going on board the vessel before it arrives. And if there's anybody on the vessel that's subject to Mandate 10.
It's still the foreman, Michi, if you'd like some more out of that.
I'll have to chew on it just for a second, Mr. Mayor.
Sounds good. Any further discussion from the Assembly? Anything else you want to add, Member Michi, before I call the roll?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, then why do this mandate? Why not just let the cruise ships decide when they want to come to town, put a plan together, and then 24 hours from when they come to Petersburg, they get a hold of our health officer, and he's the one giving them the okay to come to town. Okay?
Remember, Michi, that the only reason that the health officer has the authority to grant permission to get off the boat is because of the mandate. Without the mandate, it's just advice. And so I believe that the mandate is important to assert our control. It is the instrument that gives us control over our harbor at this moment in time.
Thank you.
Roger that. Any further discussion from the Assembly? The clerk call the roll.
Bob?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes. And it passes unanimously. Item F. Joatman Enterprises, LLC requests to lease tide lanes at the Scow Bay turnaround. I'll read the brief piece to it. We've applied to release of 6,400 square feet of tide lanes for Scow Bay turnaround for the purposes of establishing and operating a vessel maintenance business. Planning Commission recommends approval of the lease with a 3-year review to ensure the site is being used as proposed. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Member Mucci and seconded by Member Norheim. Discussion.
Mr. Mayor?
Member Mucci, proceed.
Thank you. I don't know if Mr. Cook is still on the phone, but I've read what's in the description, but maybe it would be good to let the public know what kind of services will be available at Scow Bay in this building. Thank you.
Fort Thompson, I suppose, if he's on the line, this would be an appropriate time.
Yes, please. Thank you. Operator Mario, if you could please unmute Mr. Cook.
Go ahead, Mr. Cook.
This facility is going to be both boat repair, and then when there's nobody in there, we'll be working on building boats if we can. But it will be everything to do with the vessels that are able to be taken in and out of the water on the hydraulic or regular trailers, either way. From welding, painting, it's completely enclosed, so it'll be year-round weatherproof, basically, if you can have a weatherproof place in Southeast Alaska. Basically, anything that has to do with boats that'll fit in it, that will be done there.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Appreciate that. Yeah. Mr. Cook, I appreciate you giving us that feedback this evening very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead on this one. I usually wait towards the end, but this is a no-brainer to approve it. The Planning Commission approved it. John Murgis, a local businessman in Scow Bay, wrote a letter of support, and has a TEB letter of support. I think Mr. Cook's business is a great business, and the proposal is a great opportunity for business in Scow Bay, and I'm glad he's interested in doing business here in Petersburg. Further discussion.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Of course, Member Lynn.
Yeah, I have two questions for the manager. In the lease itself, question one, in the lease itself, this will require the leasee to actually operate the facility to the intent that it was intended to originally, and if that isn't the case, then does the lease, I assume there's a clause in there that requires them to operate, and if they don't operate, then that reverts back to the borough, and do we then monitor that?
For the mayor? Yeah. Yes, that is true.
Okay. Now, my second question then, if that be the case, the current leasees there, is that same type of provision in their permits?
Assemblymember Lynn, I'm not sure about that.
I will have to look.
Yeah, Clerk Thompson says she'll have to check the lease there and see. Highlands lease.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I'll follow up later on that. Thank you.
Any further discussion by the Assembly regarding the Joatman Enterprises LLC request to lease sidelines at Scow Bay turnaround?
Just a short comment.
Of course, Member Norheim, go right ahead.
I fish, and I know that the fishing fleet loves to have people that support them when they do these things. And I'm looking forward to voting yes on another support facility for our fleet.
Thank you, Member Mohan. Well said. Any further discussion? The clerk, please call the roll.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Jeff?
And that. And that passes unanimously. On to letter G, letter to Lieutenant Governor Meyer regarding 2020 state and local elections. Assemblymember Tremblay authored the proposed letter to Lieutenant Governor Meyer, which encourages increased access to voting by mail during the pandemic. I would entertain a motion to approve this letter.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved by Member Tremblay and seconded by Member Mucci. Discussion, if you're so inclined, Member Tremblay, since you brought the letter up, if you'd care to lead out, that'd be great.
Absolutely. So this letter came about after watching the State Affairs House Committee hearing on the topic last month, I believe. They have folks from some national groups as well as the municipal clerk from Anchorage to talk about basically the bare bones of the vote-by-mail system, the different security measures in place, and I thought it seemed logical, so I started working on a draft. And it felt like a developing scenario. I kept changing language, so it took some time to bring it to us, and within the time that the letter was drafted and between the time we are talking about it now, there has been a development. So the Lieutenant Governor announced last week that they are actually, the goal of this letter is to ask the Lieutenant Governor to increase access to voting by mail for the public at large, because right now you need to take that extra step to request an absentee ballot, or you're doing in-person voting either early or at the day of. And again, this is a situation where 900 to 1,000 people tend to go vote in person during a general election. And given the uncertainties, given the fall, avoiding that would be great in a lot of ways. So between when I drafted the letter and where we are right now, last week the Lieutenant Governor has announced that they are sending out, one of the things I asked for in this letter, they are sending out a letter of request. Basically, you get this letter in the mail and it says, do you want to apply for an absentee ballot, yes or no? And so it takes that step out of your hands. It's easy to fill it out, mail it back, and then you'll get your ballot mailed to you at home. But the Lieutenant Governor is doing that only for people 65 and older right now. And so I would be happy to entertain a motion to amend language on this if we want to just ask him to revise that and send them to every voter. I'm thinking of a lot of people who this could benefit. Take, for example, even a couple, one person 65, the other person 60. Okay, so one person saying this easy application in the mail, the other person isn't. I'm thinking of people with chronic health issues, that this is a step that they may not think about. I'm thinking of the census, right? This is easier than the census, but right now our census response rate is 17%. And so how do we make this easier for people? We do some work for them. So that's my rationale for wanting this letter to be sent. I'm hoping that he takes them under advisement, because I do think it's an easy and safe way to ensure access to the ballot in the fall, and it's one less thing for people to think about. Another step that he announced that he would be doing is adopt a precinct plan where community groups can staff the precincts for the elections. And so basically they're recognizing a need for finding poll workers. They're recognizing the risk for voting in person in the fall, and they're trying to come up with solutions, except so far these solutions seem to be falling rather short. So I'm hoping that this could be a gentle little nudge towards where I think we need to be going, and I'm very open to input. It's frustrating me that we can't do a giant Google Doc where we can all type in comments together. I'm still getting used to this format. So I'm open to comments and feedback and language change. I just hope we can nudge us there a little bit better sooner for the benefit of all of us.
Thank you, Member Turnbull. Further discussion from the Assembly?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Member Lynn?
Yeah, I'm on the fence on this letter. I like the latter part of what Member Tremblay said. The letter as it stands, I probably would vote no for. If you would like to make some amendment to say to send it to all, asking all folks if they want absentee, I could agree with that one. But I've done some sensing around asking people the last a few days, and most people are acceptable with the current system. They don't really see a need for a change. So with that said, I'd vote no as it stands right now, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Member Lynn. Further discussion from the Assembly?
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Member Mucci.
Thank you very much. I was just curious if, Member Tremblay, if she had an amendment to this. If she wants to change it, now would be the time to change it before we go in the direction that might not be successful. I'm just trying to figure out if she has some amendments that she'd like to push forward here. Thank you.
Okay, Member Mucci. Further discussion from the Assembly?
I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead, Member Tremblay.
So on the second to last paragraph, there is a sentence that says, whether uniformly enacting vote by mail or proactively sending absentee ballot requests to voters to ensure easy access to the ballot, it is our hope that the state of Alaska will be proactive about these concerns. I would like to strike that sentence, and I would like to amend it to say, where as of June 11th, you announced letters of request for ballots to voters 65 and older. We ask that be amended to include all registered voters in the state of Alaska.
Clerk Thompson, did you get that?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Thank goodness. There's no way I'm getting that again.
Is that a second, Member Mucci, that I heard from you?
Yes, sir.
Right on. Discussion on the amendment. I'll chime in right away on that. I'll vote for the amendment, and I'll vote for the letter. And my reasoning is fairly simple-minded, but I think it applies. I'm pretty much in favor of anything that safely and keeps the integrity of elections in place to increase voter turnout. And I think with some of the uncertainty we've got right now, anything that gets more people involved in the voting process, I have to support. And we've lived in places before where the day of voter registration, and not coincidentally, voter turnout is generally higher. You can register day of. And this, encouraging Lieutenant Governor to broaden the vote by mail option to all demographics makes sense to me. So again, it's not going to drive down voter turnout. All it's going to do is help more people get in there. So I'll be voting yes. Further discussion on the amendment. Okay, the clerk call the roll on the amendment.
Randy?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, the amendment passes unanimously. Now we're back to the letter as amended. Any further discussion regarding the letter to Lieutenant Governor Meyer as as amended.
Mr. Mayor.
Member Mucci, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This isn't making people vote by mail. This just gives people an option. I'm sure we've seen a couple letters from members of the public who are concerned about this, but, this isn't saying that you have to vote by mail. This is giving you the opportunity to, and I think, like Phil spoke earlier, I think anytime we can do anything to increase the voter turnout, it's a good thing. It gives more people the opportunities to participate. So, yep, I think it's a good idea, and I thank Member Tremblay for pushing this forward.
Thank you, Member Mucci. Any further discussion on the letter as amended? Clerk, please call the roll.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
And that letter to Lieutenant Governor as amended, approved unanimously. Bringing us on to item H. Letter to University of Alaska Board of Regents in support of the University of Alaska Southeast in its current form in Southeast Alaska. Assembly Member Mucci requested this letter to the University of Alaska Board of Regents in support of the University of Alaska Southeast, remaining intact in its current form. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Member Mucci. Is there a second? And seconded by Member Norheim. Discussion.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Member Mucci.
I want to thank City Clerk Thompson for helping me put this together. She does most of the heavy lifting when it comes to some of my requests. So I just want to make sure she got my thanks for doing this. But, over the last couple of weeks, we've been listening to the University of Alaska kind of get beat up by, folks higher up the food chain. For me, the University of Alaska, especially in the Southeast, it's a big deal for small communities, especially in the Southeast. It gives people an opportunity to further their education, being able to get into a more productive workforce, become teachers. I think to do away with it kind of limits our abilities to kind of expand our horizons. You don't have to get a degree, but there's pretty cool classes that they put together. It's creative writing classes, and it's an important part of Southeast. I hate to see it go away. And so when I heard this on the radio, I thought, well, at least we can send a letter of our support, because I think it is important to a lot of people here in Petersburg. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Mucci. Further discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Member Lynn, proceed.
I've got a problem with the letter. The Board of Regents in the state of Alaska is facing some major budget cuts. So if you look down the road in the next 5 years, they can't continue like they are. They've got some major decisions to make, and yes, I agree they've been taking a lot of heat here lately. But the analogy I would make here is that the same thing is if we had cut $1 million out of the general fund budget, and somebody writes us a letter and says we don't want any change, that's not possible. You would have to make some change. If you would like to write a letter that would say that we'd like to see some presence that in the Southeast Alaska that really tailors to our needs in Southeast Alaska, I would be supportive of that. But to keep it as it is, I can't support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Lynn. Further discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I don't know enough about the inner workings of the University of Alaska and, the tough decisions that the Board of Regents makes. They're going to do what they have to do, but I think it's just important that, for me, just to show the region that and the regions that it's important to Southeast, and not really Southeast, but just to Petersburg and to me. I don't think I couldn't write a more specific letter about programs I wanted to keep in to this program, and I just wanted to send a letter of support from Petersburg. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Mucci. Any further discussion on the letter?
Yeah, I do.
Member Tremblay, please go ahead.
I think it's worth sending, to continue some of Member Lynn's analogy, we do get people who will speak up for the programs that are under consideration and for cutting, and that does affect people's decisions. And so I've read enough about how this doesn't actually solve the university system's larger issues. It could just be a casualty in the larger process that they're going through that would have a disproportionate effect on Southeast residents. And so I hope that we send this letter, and I'm really just trying to send good energy to them. They're having to deal with a lot, so I know that they're making tough choices, but disproportionately impacting a region like this could be pretty bad for us and for our workforce, and I'm hoping they make other choices.
Thank you, Member Tremblay. I'll chime in real quick on it. I don't disagree with the word Member Lynn said about that. You look at the longer-term forecast, the university system has some tough choices and some tough sledding ahead, and I don't disagree with that at all. That said, even if this letter feels largely symbolic, I tend to agree with Member Mucci also that Southeast is important. And that may not stay current form, and that may not be sustainable. I hope it is. I think a letter from our assembly, advocating for that, again, even if it's symbolic, I think is an important gesture towards the university system here in the Southeast. That's my 2 cents. Anyone else? Hey, the clerk, please call the roll.
Taylor?
No.
Jay?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
No.
Randy?
No.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Thank you.
The letter fails on a 2 to 3 margin, if I got that. A 3 to 3 margin, Clerk Thompson, with members Tremblay, Mucci, and Stanton Gregory voting yes.
That is correct.
All right. Thank you, Clerk Thompson. Bringing us on to item I, Borough Manager 2020 Evaluation Form. Clerk Thompson has drafted the evaluation form of the Assembly's approval. If approved, Clerk Thompson will put the entire evaluation together and send it out to the Assembly and Department heads shortly. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Member Mucci and seconded by Member Tremblay. Discussion. Well, since not everyone's jumping at once, I'll jump right in. It's important to give a borough manager performance evaluation in terms of concise, comprehensive way to give them actionable goals, give them feedback of where his strengths and weaknesses are. Last year was, we erred in our way we went about it. It felt convoluted, felt not helpful to his performance, and simply put, I'm fine with the way this one looks, and I'll definitely be voting yes. Further discussion. Clerk, please call the roll.
Bob?
Mr. Mayor?
Okay, go ahead, Member Mucci.
I I was kind of hoping for a little discussion here. I'm not saying that these 4 pages or these 3 pages are perfect. I was kind of looking for a little bit of input here to kind of, this looks okay. We can certainly vote on this in this form. I'm fine with that, but I thought we might have a little bit of dialogue here, trying to make sure this is what the Assembly wanted. If we don't want to talk about it and this is fine with everybody, that's great. I'm going to be voting for it, but I just thought there'd be some discussion. So, anyway, thank you.
Member Mucci, you're welcome. If there's any changes, of course, they can be made by amendment, so feel free, of course.
I'll try
discussion or amendment? Please do. Go right ahead, Member Tremblay.
Yeah, I guess I'll stick my hand up as the new kid at the table. I have not done this before, and so to me it all seems great. Does anybody see anything, trying to continue that ask for dialogue? Is there something missing? So explain the process, we'll fill this out, and then we'll bring it back, and then we'll go into executive session to talk about it, correct?
Yeah.
Or is it... Okay.
Yes, that is correct, Chelsea.
Yeah, so
attached to the form that you see in front of you or something similar will also be a list of goals and objectives that were given the manager last year and the progress that he's made on them. Then you all will have a chance to pare down the goals and objectives or dismiss some or whatever.
Cool. That sounds great. There's no danger that we're going to try to give him 50 more things to do. Is that a concern that we have about this?
It would be nice if we keep it focused.
Yeah, for time. We'll give you a time turner. We'll make it happen. But no, this looks great. I like the floor. It needs improvement. Needs expectations. It exceeds expectations. And then evaluator has no basis for judgment. I think those are great. Different forms of measurement, and it seems, leadership, communication, planning, managing resources, again, problem-solving, decision-making, community relations, staff relations, intergovernmental relations, assembly relations. To me, that seems rather comprehensive, but again, I am the new kid at the table, so is anyone seeing things that they would like to add? I feel like there could be a category added, maybe.
Thank you, Member Tremblay. Go ahead. Yep, go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last year, I think we gave the city manager, a list of goals and objectives, and I know some of them are complete, and some of them have been hijacked by the COVID stuff, and I think those goals and objectives should be included. I have no issues about whether or not if they're all completed or not, but I think the goals and objectives that we gave Steve last year should be part of this process, just to see where we are. I know Steve has accomplished quite a few of them, but I know he said that he has a few more to go, and I'm not... my intent is not to hold his feet to the fire on his goals and objectives, but they should be part of this document as well, just so that, the new Assembly members can see some of the stuff we asked Steve to do and see what he's accomplished. But I think that should be part of this document as well, so that when we do get into executive session, we can kind of talk to him and get his candid input about if some of the goals and objectives that we've given him are just not able to be done. I want to hear about it. I mean, a lot of us had some issues with the Parks and Recreation program, and we're doing some great things up there to kind of get that squared away. But yeah, I think that goals and objective portion of it should be included.
Yes, sir. Member Mucci, as a point of clarification, and Clerk Thompson, correct me if I'm wrong, those will be included in our eval packets we'll be receiving, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, we'll be getting that information, Jeff. We'll all have access to it during the eval process. Not to cut you off, but it's already in place, sir.
Okay, that sounds good. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Member Mucci.
So I can just like to hear from the city manager. Are there things that you'd like to see added to this, or are these things that you think are acceptable? I mean, we're doing your evaluation, but I value your input as well.
For the mayor, thank you, Assembly-Member Mitchell. No, I think this will be fine. The challenge, if you make it too complex, is then people get wrapped up in the details of that, and then it's really hard to be, accurate. It's hard to pull things together. So I think this is a much more refined package than what we tried to use last year. As several of you have mentioned, I think the goals and objectives are hugely important, and both what you gave me last year and how I did on them, and then also what you want done for the upcoming year or two. So anyway, I think it looks good.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Any further discussion regarding the Borough Manager Evaluation Form?
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Member Michi.
Thank you. So if we agree to send this out, or we agree on this form, it'll get sent to us. Is there some kind of discussion about when we want to have this evaluation in? And are we talking the end of July? Or I'm just looking for some direction here. Thank you.
Clerk Thompson, can you answer that?
Yes, thank you. Yes, Member Mucci, every year with the evaluation, there is a instruction letter from me that gives the dates that I need everything back and what the next move will be. I will need a little bit of time if this is approved in order to get the entire evaluation packet together. But as soon as I do, I will get it out to all of you with a timeline of when the evaluation will take place.
Thank you.
Anything further regarding the Borough Evaluation Form? If not, the clerk please call the roll.
Bob?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thank you.
And that passes unanimously, and thank you for your efforts getting it out to us, Clerk Thompson. That brings us down to item 16, communications. We have 2 letters in the record this week, one from the Salvation Army, one from the group called Thread. Both of those can be viewed on the Borough website. Thank you to those organizations for participating, and again, you can find those on the Borough website. Bringing us to assembly discussion items, the amendment was to turn the floor to Member Lynn regarding the underwater line. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Member Lynn.
Okay, thank you. Very quickly, we have now received 3 responsive bids for the replacement of the underwater cable. Each bid package we received has well over 200 pages of details. It's going to take staff a significant amount of time to go through this. We're hoping to have this sorted out by the end of the month when I conduct the next SEPA meeting. Whether that's done or not is still a question, but I'm very pleased that we've got 3 very responsive bids and folks want to do it. So with that, and that's all I have to say. I don't know much more, but other than that at this point, thank you.
Thank you, Member Lynn, for that update. I know you don't have anything, you said that's pretty much all you knew about the topic, so I don't know if any other members had any questions for it that would be relevant at this point. So that's all. We look forward to hearing an update from you in the future as that moves forward. Thank you for your efforts on that. And just the next item, Assembly member comments. Any comments from the Assembly on this for evening? Hearing none, I will go down to B, recognitions. Any recognitions from staff or the Assembly this evening? said one. I just really wanted to thank all of our retail workers in Petersburg for the past 3 months of working really hard to safely provide us food and services. I try to be as patient and as kind to all whenever I see at the store. And I thank you for your patience and kindness with us as members of the public. We can't do anything without you. I know oftentimes you can feel underappreciated. Know that you're not. Our continued efforts to help us go through our daily lives are much appreciated. So again, thank you so much to all the retail workers in our community. Much, much appreciated. Any further recognitions from the Assembly?
I have one.
Go ahead, Member Tremblay.
I'd just like to thank everybody for wearing masks when in indoor spaces around folks not in their family units, especially as we go along and more new faces come into town and we see outbreaks happening in regions and states so that we are what in journalist Ed Young has called the patchwork pandemic. It's going to be a very nebulous situation across our country for quite a while unless something changes. And coming inside is an important part of sharing fellowship with people that we care about, but making sure to do that while wearing masks and being responsible with our behavior is going to make all the difference for us as we go forward. So thank you to everybody who is coming together with that in mind. Thank you to everyone who's taking it on themselves to engage that way or to choose to remove themselves from the situation if they're feeling like it's unsafe. It's important that we continue to follow the health guidelines that way going forward. So thank you to everybody for doing that and for, they kind of suck. I'm sorry, they do. So thank you to everyone for sticking with it, and we're hoping that we continue to make a difference that way.
Thank you, Member Tremblay. Any other recognitions from folks tonight? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Member Norm, second by Member Tremblay. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. With that, the meeting is adjourned. You guys have a great evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for your efforts, Debbie.
Thank you, Jay. Good job.